Okay, Commissioners, the next item is item number 8. It's an application for certificate of appropriateness. It's docket number 162565. It's 360 Central Park West, Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. It's block 1209, lot 33. A neo-Renaissance style apartment building with neo-Gothic style elements designed by Rosario Candela and built in 1928-29. The application is to create new window openings and modify architectural elements. This was first presented October 28th of 2014.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rita Ashby, Preservation Staff. This item is 360 Central Park West, which is a corner apartment building at the corner of West 96th Street and Central Park West. Just a few slides. And the proposal is to widen 2 rows of window openings at the Central Park West facade. You can see these windows here. Which will double the existing 6/6 windows, making them paired windows, and also to modify architectural elements at the top of the building to accommodate the new windows. When this was originally presented at the public hearing on October 28th, the Commission expressed concerns about the impact of the thickness of the masonry at the corner with the addition of the new windows, as well as on how the fenestration pattern will be altered in relation to the hierarchy of the building, and asked that the applicants further study the proposal. In response, the applicants have provided supplemental information in their presentation to speak to these concerns, but there is no change to the proposed work. And Cass Stackelberg from Higgins Quaysbarth is here to walk you through this again.
Okay, we'll reopen the hearing.
Good afternoon, good morning, Commissioners. Cass Stackelberg, Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners. Thank you, Reba. I'll just take you through this. I think some of the commissioners may not have been here in October. So just to reiterate, this is a 16-story apartment building designed by Rosario Candela. It was completed in 1929. It actually has 2 parts. There's this piece here where we're proposing changes to the Central Park West facade, fronting onto Central Park West and West 96th Street. There's also a 16-story piece that fronts onto 95th Street. No work is proposed in that part of the building. As you may know, Candela was a very prolific architect. He's responsible for as many as 81 apartment buildings in New York, that's according to a monograph on him and J.E.R. Carpenter. The work we're proposing, as we said, is exclusively on Central Park West, as per what's under review by the commissioners, but there's also an extensive program of masonry restoration work that's being undertaken as part of this project, and a window master plan that will replace these white painted windows with new multi-light windows that have been painted in accordance with finish analysis. In October, as Reba said, there were some questions about the effect on the Central Park West facade. You asked us to look at a couple other studies. We spent time reviewing that, looking at the dimensions actually that make up these different facades. And in the end, we came back and actually would like to continue our proposal. We think it is actually the most appropriate, in large part because of the possible impact to other architectural features on the facade that could result from different changes. This is a view from 1940 of the corner piece. This is the 96th Street facade and the Central Park West facade, and then this is the 95th Street tower. And one of the things you can see on these different facades is there's a great variety of treatments for window openings. On 96, there are paired windows, sort of evenly spaced here. On Central Park West, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a moment, there's a very large variety of window types and window configurations and spacings between windows. And as well, on most elevations, there are actually differences in dimensions from the outer edge of the outermost window to the corner, even on the same elevation. So there's a great deal of variety within each elevation and then around the entire complex. This photo, again, showing the varieties or paired windows on 95th Street. This elevation, the south-facing elevation of the northern portion of the building, again, sort of a mix of treatments. This is an existing photo. I think the first thing that jumps to mind or jumps to view is the condition of the masonry. And as part of this project, as I mentioned, there's an extensive restoration program that will basically make this facade uniform again. It involves brick replacement, 100% pointing, and a lot of masonry restoration work, particularly up across the top where terracotta detail has been lost, and that will be returned to the top of the building. This sort of inappropriate repair to the underlying steel structure here will be undone, and the brickwork will be toothed in properly at the corners. There'll be other changes similar to that throughout the facade. As well, one thing to point out again is the variety. So looking at the Central Park West facade, what looks like somewhat of a regular facade, when one begins to sort of look at the dimensions and the configurations of the window, there's already a great deal of variety built into this elevation. So this dimension from the outer edge of the window here to this corner is 9'2". The dimension from the outer edge of this window to this corner is actually 8'10". So even those dimensions vary. The dimensions between this pier and this pier vary, and then even in the line of some of the windows, these are 6/6 paired windows, and above the 5th floor, they're 4/4 paired windows. So there's a great deal of variety, and the proposal that we're coming before you with, we feel doesn't interfere certainly with that variety, and I think doesn't impact negatively the character of this building, or certainly not the character of the historic district. At the base of the building, there's a limestone base, two-story limestone base, and a canopy. There's some restorative work that's going on here and at the building entry, but I show these slides just to point out this window in particular. And this window, one of the things you asked us to look at is instead of, in order to maintain this line, what would happen if we move the windows inboard instead of outboard? And obviously what ends up happening is there's an impact to this limestone treatment, or this limestone bracket that runs across the facade. So this is an existing elevation of the Central Park West facade and the proposed elevation of the Central Park West. What we're proposing is to enlarge or expand this line of windows by 3 feet outboard to have a paired reading on the outside. And one of the things I think you'll notice, this line I think actually represents that seam where the underlying steel was altered. Right now, the way you read this building actually in this corner, you sort of read this dimension and you don't read this full dimension. So by actually expanding and extending this, you're reading almost the same amount of masonry at the end of the project. There are also slight modifications to the arrangement of the masonry detailing at the top of the building. One of the things we wanted to be sure of doing is maintaining this hierarchy and arrangement with these lunettes above these paired windows, and then these simple terracotta details here. By expanding these, we're just basically stretching this terracotta detail here and here, but maintaining that organization across the facade. Some details showing how this will be done. Again, this is the area that I'm just describing by expanding some of the terracotta detailing. And then a rendering, this is an existing photograph of the building. You can see some of the issues with the masonry, and then a proposed rendering showing the introduction of an enlarged or expanded window and the repositioning of this feature. And of course, actually eliminating this seam by keying in new brick that will match the existing brick. An overall rendering of the building with an existing photograph on the right. Again, the restoration work with the masonry, the new windows in an appropriate color, and this expansion of the window openings. As I said, the work that we did, we thought of it sort of in the context of Candella's other projects, but also how it fits within the district. And I think what we find is that this change, as one of the commissioners said in October, it's not inappropriate. It doesn't have a negative impact, we believe, on the building, and we don't believe it has a negative impact on the district. Dimensionally, we've done studies sort of looking at what the existing dimensions are. If you unfold this, it's hard to read up here at the corner, but this part of the building on Central Park West and 96th Street, this is the south-facing facade, the east-facing, and the north-facing. You have different dimensions at each corner, 5'2", 9'2", 8'2", 8'10", 8'10", 8'10", 2'0", and 3'9". So there's a variety at each of these corners, actually, as you go around the building. And then the facade fronting onto 95th Street, 2'4" to the west, 2'10" to the east. Again, sort of looking at this in a little more detail, this is the existing and the proposed, sort of seeing the variety both in the configuration, these 4/4 windows on the upper floors in this line, and the 6/6 on the lower floors. The differential at the edges, 8'10", 9'2", the pier width here and here. So looking at the proposal, this differential here on this pier line, that's maintained, and the differential here at the outside is also maintained. So the the southern end of this facade is, as it is today, slightly heavier than the one to the north. So we're trying to maintain some of those hierarchies throughout. An existing and proposed typical floor plan, a bedroom in this corner with a single window and another bedroom with a single window. The proposal is to make these windows a bit more generous for a bedroom and a living room. And I'll fast forward just to look at the study of what you asked us to consider, that being sort of moving these windows inboard a little bit as well as outboard. And when you move this line inboard both in this location and this location, you end up bumping into this limestone feature, which we feel would have a significant negative impact. You can see it in detail here, and you can see the proximity of this window. So basically, we'd be pushing out 3 feet in this direction to stay clear of that element. These are other Candela projects that we looked at. I think I'm happy to go through these if you'd like. We can come back to them if you have questions, but this basically just establishes that the proposal that we're making within the sort of work of Candela is very consistent with how we treated corners. There's a great variety, asymmetries, symmetries, proximity to the corners as well.
Thank you, Cass. Are there questions for the applicant? Any questions?
So
Yes,
now those
Roberta.
rooms have 2 bedrooms, to have 2 windows, so you're saying that this is necessary to increase the area of windows, right? But you have 2 windows in the bedroom, in the corner.
There's currently 1 window facing east here
Mhm.
and here.
Mhm.
And so the effort is to expand those windows for use over the park.
So what I was asking is, and overall, the room has 2 or 3 windows, but it's the size of one of the windows that you want to increase the light of one window,
Correct.
one of the windows.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right. I look at this facade that they proposed with the introduced windows, and I think it's completely consistent with the existing facade. I think that I don't think that this introduction changes the overall feel and proportions of fenestration within the buildings. I think the applicant has actually provided sort of a persuasive argument about how these dimensions vary, and that allows certain amount of flexibility. I think that overall the project, if it's this introduction of windows includes the restoration, which I think is a very positive and significant benefit to the facades, that I think overall it actually makes for a very appropriate plan.
I'm probably the person who found it appropriate the first time around, and I haven't changed my mind. I really think we should be commending the owner and the architect for the amount of work and money that's being invested in restoring this building. When you look at that one page with the existing and the proposed, I think it's such a huge enhancement of the look of that building in the neighborhood. I just can't see opposing that. I think they should be commended for it.
Other comments? Any other comments? All right, we'll move to decision then. Okay. We can close the hearing. And Michael, do you want to read that?
Okay. All righty, regarding 360 Central Park West and the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District, the application is to create new window openings and modify architectural elements. I recommend approval, finding that the single vertical rows of windows at the end base of this facade are not significant features of the design of this facade or a character-defining feature of buildings of this type, style, or age. That the proposed alterations will be in keeping with the character of the historic design and will respect the facade's symmetrical and hierarchical organization. That the alterations will not diminish the unified appearance of the Central Park West and West 96th Street facades, which feature differences in terms of dimensions, proportions, and basic organization. That the proposed modifications will maintain the overall perception of symmetry and solidity of the corners of this large building, which features subtle variations between the facades in terms of the width of the masonry and piers. That the changes to the masonry openings and piers will be well scaled to the overall building and in keeping with prominent corners of other large apartment buildings designed by Rosario Candela. That the elimination of the expansion joints and replacement of the modern and deteriorated masonry at the corners of the building will help return the building closer to its historical appearance. That the historic masonry will be salvaged and reused to the extent possible. That all new masonry units will match the historic masonry in terms of design details, profiles, textures, and finish, and that the new windows will match the historic windows in terms of operation, configuration, details, and finish.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The application's been approved.